You wanted to change the clowns as a nation, but the circus is very much still in town. The Starmer lifestyle, luxury penthouses, VIP seats and designer clobber, Kier and Lady Starmer are living the high life, far from Labour's working class roots. Labour founder Kier Hardy fought for workers. But Sir Keir's more interested in the next glass of champagne in Arsenal's corporate box. What an arsenal. He preaches fairness for all in his attack on those struggling to pay to send their kids to private schools, while receiving a £20,000 donation in kind to put up his kid in a squillionaire penthouse for his kid to study for his GCSEs, because apparently his child needed some peace and quiet. Meanwhile, Rachel Thieves is busy bagging free clobber too, and Angie Rayner, deputy leader of course, splurges 68 grand of your money on a photographer. Hopefully nothing to do with the infamous Ginger Growler story that hit the press under Boris Johnson. And Sir Keir Starmer's £2,400 specs, perfect, of course, for admiring their sharp new wardrobes and Angie's new snaps while pensioners freeze. Then there's, of course, his conference gaffe.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
I mean, hey, calling for the return of the sausages instead of Israeli hostages. Really, Sir Keir? More worried about your next free fry-up, we'll assume. And whilst the rest of us count our pennies for Ed Miliband's energy bills laden with eco-extremism, he's out here playing the clown in 32 grand worth of new clobber. It's enough to make Kim Kardashian blush, I tell you that. They say they're defeating Tory cronyism. Honestly, nonsense. They've replaced the clowns but beefed up the Champaign socialist circus. Well, Andy, I assume after all of this you're going to be doing like Rosie Duffield and ripping up your Labour membership card with glee.
No, absolutely not. I was at Labour Party conference at the start of the week, or at the back end of last weekend.
Did you have any sausages?
Some lovely honey mustard cocktail sausages doing the rounds on the canapé circuit. It's delicious. No, look, I can't pretend that the mood at Labour Party conference in Liverpool was one of jubilation, because it's been difficult
for a few weeks.
Well,
I don't know why, Andy. I'm delighted, personally.
But actually, I think when you strip away some of the nonsense of the last few weeks, actually, Labour has some really, really serious plans for the country. It's going to take time. That's what Keir Starmer was saying in his speech on Tuesday, is that it's not going to be an overnight transformation of the country, because there are so many deep, intrinsic, entrenched problems with this country, part of which is the fault of the previous government, part of which is just, you know, there are complex problems to resolve. I think on the freebie stuff, Labour have said, all the frontbenchers have said they won't take clothing anymore. I think that's a good thing.
Well, I'm not surprised.
By the way,
he's got more than Midas now. He doesn't need any.
Yeah, he's got some nice pairs of glasses now.
Yes.
But what I would say is that this is not just a Labour problem, OK? So all parliamentarians, and it's all there. Someone said last week, Westminster scandals, if you can call this a scandal, they're never uncovered, they're just noticed. All of this information has been in the public domain for years and years, and only now are people getting upset about it. The Tories did it.
Because the media was overwhelmingly biased towards the Labour Party.
That is absolutely not true. That's not true.
Well, I enjoy a sausage as much as the next man, so to speak, but I think this is taking the Michael.
Of course it is. Oh, look, I love a sanger as well, but here is why this is a unique problem for Starmer, and that is he's come to office without any real ideology, without any charisma to speak of. So he relies on this pearl-clutching moralism to get by, and that means he sets himself a higher standard. And now, when he hasn't lived up to that standard, people can smell a hypocrite. Sure, Boris was, you know, sleazy. Sure, the kind of Conservatives do it as well. But he has basically put the noose around his own neck, and I don't think he's going to be able to get out of it.
I don't know why, just because people say, oh, well, Boris Johnson, of course, we'd expect that of him. It's somehow fine. I mean, actually, one of the reasons he wasn't clobbered in the way that Labour have been clobbered over the last few weeks is because he wasn't declaring stuff. Oh, he wasn't being honest.
Andy.
He wasn't. It's true.
Really?
But Keir Starmer, we've just learnt today that Keir Starmer actually got double the amount of money for clothes from Lord Ali, because he had declared it, but he sneakily said that it was, you know, expenses for office expenses, when it was actually for clothes. And look, regardless of whether this was in the public domain or not, whether he'd recorded it properly or not, it's the hypocrisy. You've made the same excuse that all of them are trying to make to excuse themselves at the moment. It's like, oh, the Tories do the same. And we know, no one's saying the Tories are perfect and they're not sleazy. The word Tory sleazy exists for a reason.
Spent years, didn't we?
We've got all of the tweets from Angela Rayner, Keir Starmer, calling out the Tories as disgusting for doing the exact same things that they are doing now. The receipts are there. It's the hypocrisy. No one has trust in them anymore already.
Renee, Elizabeth's written in, and Elizabeth says, Starmer's obviously acting out Animal Farm and taking on the role of the pigs.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you know,
there
Animal
were
Farm,
the pigs,
George
there were
Orwell.
the humans, and eventually you couldn't tell one from the other. And that's exactly where we are. We can't tell the pigs from the humans anymore. And it doesn't matter what the Tories did, because he's been so righteous about this.
Yes.
And do you know what? It was Alistair Campbell, who's still a big force in his party, who said, it's the sniff test. If a story stays around for more than 9 days, it ain't going away. This is not going away.
No, I know, but I actually think that when you strip it all away, in the scheme of things, I just don't think it's that important. People care when it's actual corruption, when it's people who are having undue influence. Fine. There is no evidence that anybody, as a result of this, has any undue influence.
Should we talk about the
Well, I actually think. I actually think. So clothing. I wish they hadn't done that. The football tickets, I would completely defend. I think it's totally fine for the Prime Minister. Hang on. For the Prime Minister to watch his football team in the director's box, I think is totally fine. Is it because
he's taking money from people who have something they need to gain from him, because they are looking at football regulation, and Starmer has refused to recuse himself from that decision.
But even if you put the morality aside, it is an obvious political cock-up. And if we
agree with that.
Cock up on those little things, how can we trust him to solve those big problems, Andy, that you mentioned at the start of the episode?
It is a big cock-up, I agree, and the comms has been rubbish. But actually, if you focus on the fundamentals, there are people in the background doing really good, hard work that nobody's noticing.
Like
everyone's talking about
Andy, Sue Gray, who gave herself a bumper pay rise, the same kind of pay rise that they bashed Dominic Cummings for receiving. So, yeah, the team behind the Labour Party, they've got their noses right in the troughs, just the same as everything that they accuse the Tories have been. And Chloe, Andy says there that you strip this all away, you strip it all away, and actually it all amounts to there's not much there. But you'll be on some time stripping away all of the £32,000 worth of clothing, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know what he's buying with that 32 grand. I mean, it must all be Louis Vuitton, Prada and whatnot to spend 32 grand. I mean, I have a go at myself if I spend a couple of £100 on one day shopping, buying clothes, but now I seem like a cheapskate in comparison. Just going back to what you were saying, Andy, about, you know, this is all fluff, it doesn't really matter, there's no evidence of actual unfair cronyism influence on policy. But Wes Streeting, I was impressed when Wes Streeting came out and said, I'm going to reform the NHS, I'm going to bring in elements of privatisation, which it needs. I think that was a bold, brave thing to do. However, then we find out that he received about 170 grand to himself from donors with links to private medical companies.
So I think there's a really good argument, actually.
Makes me think he's just doing it because
if we're going to have a serious conversation about all of this, let's talk about maybe reforming the system, about how we fund our politics, because that is causing the perception problems here that we're all talking about and that we all agree on.
Well, there we are. Andy has come out for reform. So
there we go.
Just not the reform that you think.